It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon, and I was home, alone. I had just finished cleaning the kitchen and thought about tidying up a bit more before Sarah got home. As I picked up her coat from the chair by the door, a small piece of paper fell out of the pocket. It was crumpled, almost hidden, and it looked like something she might have forgotten. Curious, I bent down to pick it up, unfolding it slowly. The note had only a few words, written in a quick, messy style. "Can't wait to see you again." My hands froze. I felt my heart beat faster. A strange feeling in my chest. I stared at those words, not sure what to think. Why would Sarah have a note like this? And who could it be from? The words were simple, but they felt personal, warm, like something you'd say to someone you cared about. For a moment, I thought it was nothing. Maybe it was just from a friend or a coworker. But as I stood there, I started to remember little things. Sarah had been busy a lot recently, often coming home late and saying she had to stay longer at work. She seemed tired, distracted. I had thought nothing of it then. But now, with this note in my hand, all those small things felt different. I tried to shake the feeling away, but the worry stayed in my mind. I thought about asking her, just a simple question, like, "Hey, what's this note about?" But I could already imagine her reaction. She might think I was invading her privacy, or maybe she would get angry. And what if, just what if, she was hiding something? If I asked her, would she even tell me the truth? I folded the note back up and put it back in her coat pocket. I decided not to say anything, at least not now. Maybe it was nothing, I told myself. Maybe I was just overthinking. But the words from that note repeated in my mind, like an echo. "Can't wait to see you again." They were soft words, but they felt heavy to me. The next few days were strange. Every time Sarah walked into the room, I found myself watching her a little closer. She seemed normal, cheerful, even a bit tired like usual. But now every smile, every laugh, felt like it might have a hidden meaning. I felt like a stranger in my own house, unsure of everything I thought I knew. One day, as I was putting away her things again, I noticed her purse was open on the table. I don't know what came over me, but I felt a strong urge to look inside. My hand shook a bit as I reached for it, thinking I might find nothing, or maybe something that would answer all my questions. Inside her purse, I found another small piece of paper. My heart dropped. This note was also short, with just a few words. "Same place tomorrow?" It looked just like the first note, with the same quick, messy handwriting. I stared at the words, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I didn't want to believe it, but the notes were real, and they were from someone. That night, Sarah came home late again. She said she had to work overtime just like before. She looked tired, her hair a bit messy, her clothes wrinkled from a long day. She smiled at me, and I tried to smile back, but it felt forced. I kept thinking about that note in her purse, wondering who she was meeting and where this same place was. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to ask her right then, to show her the notes and ask who was writing to her. But I felt scared. I didn't want to push her away or make her angry. What if I was wrong? What if I misunderstood everything? The days passed, and the notes stayed in my mind, filling me with worry. I couldn't sleep well at night, and during the day I felt like a ghost, moving through the house without really being there. I was always thinking about Sarah, wondering if she was really just busy with work, or if she was busy with someone else. I knew I couldn't keep this feeling inside forever. Soon, I would have to ask her the truth, no matter how afraid I was. But each day, I felt my heart grow a little heavier, like a stone, pulling me down. And each night, I would look at Sarah and wonder if I really knew her at all. The days kept passing, but I couldn't forget about the notes. Each time Sarah came home, I watched her carefully. She seemed the same as always, smiling and laughing. But to me, everything felt different. I felt like I was carrying a big secret, one that made my heart feel heavy all the time. One evening, Sarah left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to take a shower. The phone beeped with a message. I told myself not to look, that it was wrong to check her messages. But a part of me wanted to know. My hand moved on its own, reaching for the phone. I opened the message, feeling my hands shake. The message was from someone named Jay. It said, "Thanks for today. Can't wait to meet again soon. My heart sank as I read those words. Who was Jay? And why was this message so friendly, so close? It sounded like someone who wanted to spend time with her, someone who felt happy around her. Quickly put the phone down, feeling guilty. I knew it was wrong to look at her messages, but now I felt even worse. The note, the message, her late nights, it was all adding up, like pieces of a puzzle. I felt sure now that Sarah was hiding something from me, something important. When she came back into the kitchen, she looked at me and smiled. "Hey, everything okay?" she asked, drying her hair with a towel. I forced a smile and nodded, but inside, I felt lost. How could I tell her everything wasn't okay? How could I tell her I felt like a stranger in my own marriage? Over the next few days, my worries grew. I found myself checking her things whenever she wasn't around. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. I looked in her purse, her coat pockets, and even her car. Each time, I felt like a thief, sneaking around in my own house. Then, one night, I found another note in her car. This one was different. Said, "Last time was amazing. Same time next week." I stared at the words, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. My heart hurt, like it was breaking into pieces. Who was she meeting? And what was so amazing about it? That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Sarah breathing softly beside me. I wanted to shake her awake and ask her, "Who is this? Who are you meeting?" But I felt too afraid. I didn't know if I could handle the answer. The next day, I made a decision. I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I had to ask her. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. That evening, as we were sitting down for dinner, I looked at her and took a deep breath. My heart was racing, but I knew this was my chance. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I found something in your coat pocket a few days ago. It was a note. And then, I found more notes, and a message. Who are they from?" She looked at me, her eyes wide. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, she reached for her glass of water, taking a sip before looking back at me. "Why were you going through my things?" she asked, her voice calm but her face a little tense. I felt a bit guilty, but I couldn't back down now. "I wasn't trying to invade your privacy, but I found the notes by accident, and they made me worry." "I don't understand, Sarah. Who are you meeting?" She looked away, her face thoughtful, as if she was trying to decide what to say. I waited, my hands shaking under the table. Finally, she looked back at me, her eyes sad. "John, I didn't mean for you to find those. I know it looks bad, but it's not what you think." Her words made me feel a bit better, but I still needed more. "Then tell me, please. Help me understand." She sighed and shook her head. "I can't explain everything right now. Just trust me, okay?" Trust her? That's what she was asking me? After finding all those notes, after reading that message? I wanted to trust her, but everything felt wrong. I felt like there was a wall between us, one that kept getting taller and taller. That night, we went to bed without talking anymore. I lay there, feeling cold. Even though Sarah was right next to me, I felt more alone than ever. She didn't want to tell me the truth, and I didn't know if I could wait much longer. In the days that followed, Sarah started acting differently. She seemed more distant, spending more time out of the house. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't help it. Each time she left, I wondered if she was meeting this Jay, if she was with someone else. I was too afraid to push her for answers again. I didn't want to make her angry, didn't want to lose her. But every day felt like I was slipping further away from her. Every smile she gave me felt like it was hiding something, and every laugh sounded like it wasn't real. One night, as I sat alone in the living room, I realized that I couldn't keep living like this. I had to find a way to know the truth, or I would lose myself in all this doubt. I needed to understand what was happening, even if it hurt. The tension between Sarah and me felt like a thick wall now, one that I didn't know how to break. Every day, I wondered if I should ask her again, if I should tell her how worried I felt. But something inside me kept holding back. I was scared of what I might hear. I didn't want to know, not if it meant I would lose her. One evening, I decided it was time. I couldn't go on like this, feeling lost and full of questions. I knew I had to talk to her again, even if it hurt. So, I waited for her to come home, my mind filled with words I would say. I kept repeating them in my head, trying to make them sound calm, gentle, so she would know I wasn't angry. I was just hurt and scared. Finally, she walked through the door, looking as tired as ever. She set down her bag, and I could see she was ready to go straight to bed. But I couldn't let her escape this time. "Sarah," I said softly, standing up and walking over to her. She looked at me, a bit surprised, as if she didn't expect me to speak to her right away. "We need to talk." She sighed and looked away, but she didn't walk away. She stayed there, looking down at her shoes, waiting. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my voice calm. "I found more notes," I said. "I know you told me to trust you, but I can't ignore this anymore. I need to know what's going on. Who are you meeting? What's happening between us?" Sarah looked up at me then, her eyes tired and sad. For a moment, I thought I saw something like guilt, but it was gone so fast I couldn't be sure. "John," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I didn't want you to find out like this. I was hoping I could keep it a secret, just a little longer." Her words made my heart feel heavy, like it was breaking into 1,000 pieces. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something dark and deep, a place I didn't want to go. "Keep what a secret, Sarah?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Please just tell me. I need to know." She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously. She didn't look at me, but I could see her face, her expression full of something I couldn't understand. "It's not what you think, John," she said finally. I haven't been seeing someone else. I promise you that." Her words should have made me feel better, but somehow they didn't. I still felt the same worry, the same doubt. If she wasn't seeing someone, then what was going on? Why all the secrets? Then why the notes, the messages? I asked. "Why have you been acting so strange?" She took a deep breath, her face softening, but still full of something heavy. "I wanted to surprise you," she said slowly. "I was working with a friend, planning something special for us. I didn't want you to find out because I wanted it to be a surprise." A surprise? Her words didn't make sense at first. I looked at her, confused, trying to understand. You're planning a surprise for me?" She nodded, her eyes meeting mine for the first time. "Yes, I wanted to plan a special trip, just for the two of us. I've been saving money and meeting with a friend to organize it all. I wanted it to be a big surprise, something you'd never forget." Her words made my heart feel strange, a mix of relief and regret. All this time, I had been thinking the worst, imagining things that weren't true. I had doubted her, felt hurt and angry, and yet she had only been trying to make me happy. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "Why didn't you just tell me, Sarah?" I asked, feeling a bit foolish now. I thought you were hiding something bad from me." She looked down again, a small smile on her face, but it was sad. "I didn't want to ruin the surprise," she said. "And then, when I saw you were acting differently, I thought maybe I should tell you. But I was afraid it would make you feel like you couldn't trust me anymore." I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. Here she was, working so hard to plan something special for us, and I had been spying on her, looking through her things, doubting her love. I felt ashamed, realizing how my actions must have hurt her, even if she didn't say it out loud. "I'm sorry, Sarah," I said, my voice quiet. "I should have trusted you. I was so afraid of losing you that I let my fears take over." She looked up at me, her eyes soft and forgiving. "It's okay, John. I understand. We've been through a lot, and I know trust isn't always easy. But I need you to believe in me, to believe in us." I nodded, feeling a small weight lift from my heart. I knew now that I had to let go of my fears, to trust her fully. She had never given me a reason to doubt her, and I had let my own insecurities cloud my judgment. We stood there in silence for a while, both of us feeling the relief, the warmth of finally understanding each other. I knew we still had things to work through, but I felt hopeful now, knowing that we could face them together. As we sat down to talk more, to really open up and share our feelings, I realized that this was the beginning of a new chapter for us. A chapter built on trust, on understanding, and on the love we had almost forgotten. After that night, I thought everything would feel better, that I could forget my doubts and move forward. But somehow, things still felt strange. Even though Sarah had explained everything, I still felt a small worry deep inside me, like a shadow I couldn't quite get rid of. Sarah was still distant, still spending a lot of time outside the house. She told me she had to finalize the plans for the surprise trip, and I wanted to believe her. But every time she left, I felt that same worry return, stronger each time. I tried to tell myself that she was just planning something nice for us, something that would bring us closer. Still, the doubt stayed in my mind, making me feel uneasy. One evening, Sarah came home late again. She looked tired, her hair a little messy, and her face showed stress. She greeted me with a quick smile, but I could see she was distracted. I wanted to ask her where she'd been, but I didn't want to sound suspicious again. I didn't want to make her feel like I didn't trust her. Instead, I just said, "Long day." She nodded, putting her bag down and sighing. "Yes, very long," she replied, rubbing her temples. "There's so much to plan, and it's taking longer than I thought." I nodded, pretending to understand, but inside, my heart felt heavy. I wanted to ask more, to understand what was really going on, but I felt afraid. I didn't want her to get upset, didn't want her to think I was questioning her again. So, I stayed silent, letting the doubt sit there between us, unspoken. In the following days, things didn't get any better. Sarah was still out late, and I was left at home, wondering, thinking, doubting. Every night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was making a mistake by not asking her more questions. Part of me felt that I should trust her completely, but another part of me was filled with fear, with a worry that something was still wrong. One evening, when Sarah was out again, I found myself pacing around the house. I couldn't sit still, couldn't calm my mind. I kept looking at the clock, watching the minutes go by, waiting for her to come back. Every time I heard a noise outside, my heart would jump, hoping it was her. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my coat and decided to go for a walk, hoping the fresh air would help me clear my head. But as I walked through the quiet streets, my mind kept going back to Sarah, to the mystery of her late nights and distant behavior. I knew I had to talk to her, to tell her how I was feeling. I couldn't keep holding it in, couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. When I got back home, Sarah was there, sitting on the couch, looking tired but calm. She looked up at me as I walked in, and I could see a question in her eyes, like she knew I wanted to say something. "Sarah," I started, my voice soft but serious. "I know you're planning something special for us, but I still feel worried. I feel like you're slipping away, like we're growing further apart." She looked at me, her face showing a bit of sadness. She took a deep breath before speaking. "John, I know this has been hard for you. I know you're feeling left out, and I'm sorry for that. But I promise, I'm doing all of this for us." I nodded, trying to believe her, but the worry didn't go away. "It's just, I feel like I don't know you anymore," I admitted, feeling a strange sadness in my chest. "We used to share everything, but now I feel like there's a part of you I can't reach." She looked down, her hands resting in her lap. "I know, John, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel this way. I thought I could keep this a secret until the trip was ready. But maybe I made a mistake." Hearing her say this made me feel both better and worse at the same time. Better because she understood my feelings, but worse because it felt like we were drifting apart even though we loved each other. "Maybe we should work on this together," I said, trying to sound hopeful. "Maybe I can help with the plans. That way I won't feel so left out." She looked at me and gave a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's a good idea, John, but I think this is something I need to finish on my own. I want this to be my gift to you. Please, just trust me a little longer." I wanted to say yes, to let her finish the surprise her way. But as I looked at her, I still felt that strange distance, Like there was something she wasn't telling me. I didn't want to doubt her, didn't want to ruin the effort she was putting into our relationship. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong. That night, as I lay in bed next to her, I felt more alone than ever. Sarah was right there beside me, but it felt like there was a wall between us, one I couldn't break down no matter how hard I tried. I felt stuck, trapped in my own worry, unsure of what to do. I knew I had to trust her, had to believe in her love for me. But every day, the doubt grew stronger, filling me with fear and sadness. I didn't want to lose her, didn't want our love to fade away. But I also didn't know how to reach her, how to bring her back to me. All I could do was wait and hope that, in the end, everything would be okay. But deep down, I couldn't help feeling that something important was slipping through my fingers, something I might never get back. One evening, Sarah came home and looked at me with a strange expression. Her eyes were soft, but there was also something serious in them. I was sitting on the couch, lost in my thoughts as usual. When she walked in, I looked up, and I felt my heart beat faster. I knew, in that moment, she wanted to tell me something important. "John," she said softly, sitting down next to me, "we need to talk." Her voice was gentle, but I could hear the weight in her words. I nodded, trying to stay calm. My mind raced, wondering if this was it. If this was the moment everything would finally make sense. I felt both nervous and relieved, hoping she would give me the answers I had been waiting for. Sarah took a deep breath, looking down at her hands. She was quiet for a moment, as if she was trying to find the right words. I waited, my heart beating loudly in my chest. "John, I know I've been distant lately," she began, her voice quiet but clear. "I know you felt worried, and I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean to make you feel this way." I felt a small sense of relief as she spoke, but I still didn't understand. "Sarah, I just don't understand what's happening," I said softly. "I feel like I've been losing you, like you're slipping away from me." She looked at me then, her eyes filled with emotion. "John, I want to tell you everything," she said. "I didn't mean to keep you in the dark. I wanted to do something special for you. I wanted to give you a surprise, something you would never forget." I nodded, still not fully understanding. "So please?" "For me." She gave a small smile, and I could see the sadness in her eyes. "Yes, for you. I was planning a trip, something special, just for the two of us. I wanted to take you away from everything, to give us a fresh start. I wanted to show you how much you mean to me." Hearing her say these words made me feel a mix of relief and regret. I realized then that I had been so focused on my fears and doubts that I hadn't seen the love she was trying to show me. She had been working so hard, putting so much effort into something just for us, and I had been too busy worrying to appreciate it. I reached out and took her hand, feeling a wave of guilt wash over me. "Sarah, I didn't know," I said quietly. I thought something else was going on. I'm sorry. I should have trusted you." She squeezed my hand, her expression softening. "It's okay, John. I understand why you felt that way. I know I wasn't open with you, and that was my mistake. I just wanted to keep it a surprise. But I see now that maybe I should have told you sooner." We sat there in silence for a moment, both of us holding hands, feeling the weight of the past few weeks lifting. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness, knowing that I had let my doubts almost ruin something beautiful. After a moment, Sarah spoke again. "The trip is all planned now. I wanted to tell you tonight because, well, I didn't want you to keep feeling this way. I didn't want you to worry anymore." I looked at her, feeling a warm sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Sarah," I said, my voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for everything. I know I've been difficult, and I know I didn't handle things well. But I want you to know that I love you, and I'm grateful for everything you're doing for us." She smiled, a real, genuine smile, and I felt my heart lighten. I realized then that this trip wasn't just a surprise. It was a chance for us to reconnect, to remember why we fell in love in the first place. "When do we leave?" I asked, feeling a spark of excitement for the first time in weeks. Sarah's smile grew wider. "Next week," she said. "I've taken care of everything. All you need to do is pack your bags and be ready for an adventure. I laughed, feeling a weight lift from my chest. Felt good to laugh, to feel happy and hopeful again. For the first time in a long time, I felt like everything would be okay. We spent the rest of the evening talking about the trip. She didn't give away too many details, wanting to keep some parts a surprise, but she told me enough to make me feel excited. We talked about the places we would visit, the things we would do, and I felt a sense of warmth and connection that I had missed so much. As the night went on, I realized how lucky I was to have someone like Sarah in my life. She had put so much effort into planning this trip, all because she wanted to make me happy, to make us happy. I felt a deep sense of love and gratitude, and I promised myself that I would never let my doubts come between us again. Before we went to bed, I took her hand and looked into her eyes. "Sarah, thank you," I said softly. "Thank you for everything. I know I've made things difficult, but I want you to know how much I appreciate you. You mean the world to me." She smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "I love you, John," she said, her voice full of warmth. "And I'm so glad we're doing this together." That night, as we lay in bed, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. I knew that we still had things to work on, that our journey wasn't over, but I felt hopeful, knowing that we were taking this step together, that we were ready to rebuild the trust and love that had brought us together in the first place. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt Sarah's hand in mine, and I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. This trip was just the beginning, a new chapter for us, a chance to start fresh and leave the past behind. And for the first time, I felt ready to embrace it fully, to let go of my fears and open my heart to the love and happiness that waited for us on this journey. The day of our trip finally came. I was nervous, but it was the good kind of nervous, the kind that comes before something exciting. I packed my things carefully, trying to imagine where Sarah was taking me. She had only given me small hints, saying it was somewhere peaceful, a place where we could relax and forget about everything else. As we got into the car, Sarah smiled at me, her eyes bright with excitement. I could see how much this trip meant to her, and that made me feel even more grateful. I reached over and squeezed her hand, feeling a sense of warmth between us that I hadn't felt in a long time. "Are you ready for our adventure?" she asked, looking at me with a playful smile. I laughed and nodded. "Yes, I'm ready," I said. "Let's go." The drive was long, but the view was beautiful. We passed fields and hills, the sky a clear blue above us. It felt like the world was opening up, like we were leaving behind all the stress and worries of our everyday life. For the first time in weeks, I felt relaxed. I looked over at Sarah, watching her as she focused on the road, and I felt lucky to have her by my side. Finally, after a few hours, we arrived at our destination. It was a small cabin in the woods, surrounded by tall trees and a quiet lake nearby. The air was fresh, filled with the smell of pine, and the sound of birds singing around us. It was perfect, peaceful, private, and exactly what we needed. Sarah parked the car, and we both got out, stretching and looking around. She turned to me, smiling. "Do you like it?" I nodded, feeling a wave of happiness. "It's beautiful, Sarah. Thank you for bringing me here." We walked into the cabin, which was cozy and warm. There was a fireplace, a small kitchen, and a large window that looked out over the lake. It felt like a place made just for us, a place where we could forget about everything else and just focus on each other. After we unpacked, Sarah suggested we take a walk by the lake. I agreed, and we headed down a small path that led to the water. The sun was starting to set, casting a warm, golden light over everything. We walked side by side, not saying much, just enjoying the quiet and each other's company. As we reached the edge of the lake, I took a deep breath, feeling the peace of the place settle over me. I turned to Sarah, feeling a mix of emotions. "Thank you, Sarah," I said softly. "Thank you for this trip, for everything. I know I haven't been easy to live with lately, but I want you to know how much I appreciate you." She looked at me, her eyes full of kindness. "John, I know things have been hard. I know you've been feeling worried, and I understand why, but I want you to know that I love you, that I'm here for you. This trip is my way of showing you that." Her words touched my heart, filling me with a sense of warmth and gratitude. I reached out and took her hand, holding it tightly. I love you too, Sarah, and I promise from now on, I'll trust you more. I won't let my fears come between us again. We stood there by the lake, watching the sun slowly disappear behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. It felt like a new beginning, a fresh start for both of us. All the tension and doubt of the past few weeks melted away, replaced by a feeling of peace and closeness. That evening, we made a simple dinner together, laughing and talking as we cooked. It felt good to be there with her, to share these small moments without any worries hanging over us. After dinner, we sat by the fireplace, watching the flames dance, the warmth filling the room. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her, feeling a deep sense of contentment. As the fire crackled softly, we talked about our dreams, our hopes, and all the things we wanted to do together. It was like rediscovering each other, like finding parts of ourselves that we had forgotten. I realized then how important it was to take these moments, to focus on each other, to keep our love strong. The next morning, we woke up early and decided to go for a hike. The forest was quiet, filled with the sound of birds and the rustling of leaves. We walked along the trails, stopping now and then to look at the view or to point out something interesting. We laughed, shared stories, and felt a sense of joy in simply being together. At one point, we reached a spot with a beautiful view of the valley below. We sat down on a rock, catching our breath and enjoying the scenery. Sarah looked at me, a soft smile on her face. "John," she said, her voice gentle, "I'm glad we came here. I feel like this is what we needed. A chance to remember what's important." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "Yes, I feel the same. This trip has shown me how lucky I am to have you, how important it is to trust and believe in each other." She took my hand, and we sat there in silence, watching the view, feeling a deep connection between us. It was a moment I would remember forever, a reminder of the love we shared and the strength it gave us. When we finally left the cabin and drove back home, I felt like a new person. The doubts and worries that had once filled my mind were gone, replaced by a sense of trust and peace. I looked at Sarah as she drove, and I felt a deep love for her, a love that had grown stronger because of everything we had been through. As we arrived home, I knew that this trip had changed us. It had brought us closer, helped us to understand each other, and reminded us of the importance of trust. I promised myself that I would never let my fears come between us again, that I would always believe in the love we had built together. And as we walked back into our home, hand in hand, I knew that we were ready for whatever the future held, knowing that we had each other, and that was all we needed.